All right. So, good day, everyone. My name is Christina Williams, and I have been given the pleasure to chair our first, I would say, youth event by youth for youth in our Adolescent Prevention Pregnancy Week. And let me add that this is the first week and is commemorated by UNFPA and PAHO. It's the first Adolescent Prevention Pregnancy Week for the Caribbean, and we are here with our young people, and today planned to be an exciting one. We have, I would say, a cadre of panelists that will speak later on today about their experiences, both as advocates and as teen mothers as well. So we're hearing not just from the advocates, but from persons who have lived the experience and is currently living it. We are also going to be having question and answers, of course, and an interaction. And for those of you who are joining here, whether on YouTube or other social media platforms, we are asking you to please engage. We want to hear from our youth. And for those of you wondering, why is it so important for us to have this session? It's because the Latin America and the Caribbean is noted as the region with the second highest rates of teenage pregnancy. And when we look at the fact that we're within the era of COVID-19, a global pandemic, a crisis, and we're seeing where more and more of our young girls are at risk. They're at risk of not being able to access information as well as services around their sexual and reproductive health. And once you cannot access services and you cannot access information, then you mean that young girls are more at risk of issues such as teenage pregnancy. So we want to ensure that through this platform and other platforms of what we've been having over the course of the week provides avenues for us to get information out about how we can support our teen mothers and how we can also prevent that as well in the young women of our population. So at this time, we're going to be sharing a video with you, and we hope you will enjoy.
Hi, everybody. Sorry for the delay. Give me 1 second so I can pull this up for you guys.
Okay, so while Clarissa loads our video, I just wanted to quickly ask, and I hope, well, I know that the live chat has been enabled on YouTube. So I will ask quickly, what are your expectations for today? Does anyone quickly just go into the chat, share with us what are your expectations for our Youth, Our Truth program this afternoon?
I'll go ahead and, while y'all are typing,
Sure,
I'll go ahead and play.
You may play.
Great, thank you.
Sure, go ahead.
Oh no, it's an ad.
Welcome back to the mirror. And no, you're not alone.
Okay, let's see. There we go.
Hospital jumper. Things are about to get real now. Prayers up. Break it.
Janu, me have a different hunger from me, you them burn. As daylight out on the road, me a pray me take time. Oh yeah, from me you them burn. Whoa, 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 whoa. Hustle turn up, must be love. Hope they know not depend by love. Rain a fall, I got it all. Happy work hard is a must. Cause me not go home without them dinner. Some things got to give. No me no walk home without no dinner. My youth them a believe me going harder. Yes, my youth them a feel love them father. Protect them and be there me want to share. Me and them have to spend no time. And some of phone, still I go home. Even if I don't have a dime. No, me now gonna let my kids know stop. Some things got to give. Can't be alive and make them suffer. My youth, them have believe me going harder. Yes, my youth, them have love them harder. Protect them and be there for them mother. Every day them smile be get brother. Oh, they must know I'm their hero. Yeah, you know me can't go without them food. No. Every time when I hear them cry, put me in a bad mood. I fi carry them through go. Hey, yeah, tell you come, me going harder. As my youth, them a feel love them father. Protect them and be there for them father. Every day them smile big get brighter. Oh, we must know I'm their hero. That's it, we start the thing, man. Ready? Just think, if you want to see more, let us know in the comments below. Shh. Am I quiet? I can't remember it. What that thing? You're right. That thing.
Jesus.
That's it.
Hey everyone. Hi everyone. Hey everyone, thanks for watching. If you want to see more, please let us know in the comments below. Bye.
Okay, thank you, Claire. So we do have 2 other videos we'd like to share with you. But for those of you who are just joining us, welcome to Youth Our Truth. Today we're looking at adolescent pregnancy prevention as well as risk associated. I am Christina Williams. I am from the lovely island of Jamaica. And of course, I am joined here with young people from all over the region who are either acting as panelists as well as persons who are just here joining us who would like to share their voices on the issue. For those of you wondering again why this is so important, it's because for this region, we are ranked the 2nd highest in terms of rates of teenage pregnancy. In fact, PAHO notes that 15% of our pregnancies that happen in this region happen to women and girls below the age of 20. That's why it's so important for us to have this conversation, not just to have a conversation for conversation's sake, but to also suggest solutions in how we can support our young girls at risk and to also prevent this from even happening. So Clarissa is going to share with us 2 videos of young people from across the region who are also sharing their voices on the matter. Clarissa?
Yep, no problem. Here we go. Here's one.
My name is Shrika Ka, and I give PAHO consent to use this video. I was 20 years old when I became a parent. I had this really close male friend, and one thing led to another, and I became pregnant. With both of us being from an extremely religious background, and abortion was not an option, nor a thought to even consider. So I became a mom. I wish I knew being a mom meant worrying about your kid 24/7 and questioning everything you do because of self-doubt. An important factor I learned is listening to the advice you're given carefully before administering it on your kid and trusting your instincts and yourself. You will do an amazing job.
Okay, so that's one video that we have from you. We have, one second, I didn't mean to do all of this. And then we have another one from a male. Let me go ahead and try to expand this as large as I can for you guys.
It's It's okay, Clarissa. We allow you to get the video up and running. As we said before, it's youth our truth, and that's why it's so important for us to ensure that we don't only have persons who are advocates or persons who are from the government, but we also have young people who have lived this experience to speak to us directly about what that is like and what they need in terms of support going forward. So I think the video is ready, and here we go. Banda Mitchell.
Here we go.
Zo, goedenavond. Mijn naam is Magda Mitchell. Bij deze geef ik Stichting PAHO toestemming om mijn video te mogen gebruiken als tienervader. Ik ben 22 jaar dus jong en ik ben nog schoolgaande. Voorbehoedsmiddel is iets dat ik al op zeer jonge leeftijd veel over wist. De samenleving, in het bijzonder mijn moeder, die was zeer geschokt vanwege het feit dat mijn babymama en ik nooit een relatie hadden. We waren meer best friends. Haar zwangerschap had meer een negatieve impact bij mij. Waarom? Omdat ik haar niet bij me had tijdens haar zwangerschap om haar de nodige ondersteuning te kunnen geven. Wat ik als vader ervaarde was meer blijdschap, maar aan de ene kant ook teleurstelling vanwege een onregelmatige menstruatie van mijn babymama.
Okay. Thank you so much for helping us out, Clarissa, with those videos. I hope all of you would have enjoyed and also pulled already some things that we can do to support our young people as we go forward. So we're talking about youth, our truth. And at the core of this, as I like to say, this event was curated by youth for youth. I want to big up all the young people. Well, big up is a Jamaican term. I hope you all understand that. I want to salute then all the young people who are joining us here, whether here on Zoom or live on other platforms, from whatever Caribbean country you are from. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Of course, I want to read what was said in the chat earlier, but just before I do that, I want to welcome from St. Kitts and Nevis, Rodena DaCosta. She's actually a teen mother, and she's here to share a little bit about her experience with us. Once again, it's Youth, Our Truth. It's not just a title that we put to this. It's a central, a core component of our program this afternoon. We want youth to speak their truth as we work together to ensure that we can reduce the cases of teenage pregnancy and to support our teen mothers. Rodena, you're here with us?
Yes, I am.
You are. All right, good. So my question to you, and you can go about answering this whichever way you feel comfortable. Tell us a little bit about your experience as a teen mother.
My experience as a teen mother was very difficult. Because it was difficult because I didn't have the support that I needed at first. So that is why it was difficult.
Okay. Thank you, Rodena. So you spoke about the support not being there. So tell us, and I know that there are a number of persons here from my PAHO, from even CARICOM, governments, etc., who works in the field of health and are here really to see how they can provide support to young mothers. So tell us and share with us, how do you think we can go about supporting young women who are teen mothers, or even in the case of preventing that from happening?
I think we could support young mothers by stop judging them and stop talking down on them, because we're not perfect. People do make mistakes.
I agree. I agree completely. I agree completely. There's this saying that we have in Jamaica that he without sin, well, I think everybody knows this, but if you're a Christian, he without sin cast the first stone. And I think it's important for us to ensure that at the core of whatever interventions we have, that is youth friendly or adolescent friendly, and that we seek to support instead of, as you said correctly, Rodena, tear down our young people and our young mothers. And the final question I have for you is, your story is also one of resilience, right? And you, I think, embody that once young people are supported, they can accomplish a lot. Their potential is still very much untapped once we give them the opportunity to achieve. So I want to ask you, what is your motivation? It's probably present tense, or even if it's past tense, what was your motivation to keep going, to keep studying, you're working, all of that? What is your motivation? And maybe in answering that question, what would you say to a fellow teen mother who may be here today listening and, would want some kind of motivation as well?
Okay, I needed a better life for my child, so for both of us. But my thing was, if I don't do it, nobody else will do it for her. So I go about by getting a job. After working, I leave the job, go to classes to complete my education, so I can get a better job to support both of us and even prepare for our future. And I also need my daughter to go to university, so I have to prepare for all of that.
Okay. All right, Rodena, thank you so much for sharing with us this afternoon. I really hope that your presentation, brief though it was, I would say, still very profound enough to appeal to the persons here who are, I would say, government officials or work within NGOs who can do something to support young girls like you and other young girls as well across the region. So thank you so much, Rodena. I hope you'll stay with us to the end of the program if you can, because I'm very sure that whatever else you have to say will be very important in the discussion going forward. Thank you so much again, and really, really, your strength that you have, I aspire as well to have that, and especially in my work as well as I go on in supporting young women in my country. Thank you. All right. So now we're going to pull up some of the things that we seen in the chat, right? Because yes, I saw that. Thank you so much. So I want to pull up something I saw in the chat, and I have two devices open because I want to ensure that I'm able to see what's happening. So give me a second. Let me just pull up what's happening here. All right. So the first person I saw commented was from Samantha Henry, and I think this is Samantha from Jamaica. She can tell me if I'm right or if I'm wrong. She says we can help prevent adolescent pregnancy by supporting our young girls in school, especially if they're from poor families, to ensure that they're staying in school and obtain education. Very true, very true. And she even went on to quote some WHO statistics. So we know that Samantha come with our facts. Oh, Samantha from Guyana. Wow, I have a friend from Jamaica who is actually called Samantha Henry. So I think you have a twin, Samantha from Jamaica. I probably should link you both up. Right, I see Michelle Smart Bartley mentioned the fact that support will be given from the CARICOM Secretariat, Youth Development Program, of course. So we already know that there's support available for persons not just here, but people within our country who we think need the support. Let me see. I don't know if Kimberly wants to help me out with the chat here. It's a little hard to navigate both. Okay, so I'm seeing from Khadija Pierre. She says, I'm expecting to gain information on how to engage youth and conversations around teen pregnancy and also the new risks that teenage parents are facing in a COVID-19 world. Very true, Khadija. I very much agree with you because we're seeing where there are new and emerging issues since COVID-19 in terms of young people being able to access services and credible information. Then Abigail is saying, oh, she's actually asking a question. I think Kimberly will be able to assist you, Abigail. And then Angeli is saying to understand the reasons for teen pregnancy and what message will they accept as to prevention. So a lot of different expectations we're having here, and I'm very sure that all those expectations will be met, if not more, because as I said before, today is about our truth. And we're going to be having a lot of solutions and recommendations being pulled out. And we don't just want to do all the talking, of course. We want to also hear from you, both here on Zoom and other platforms, in how you can engage young mothers as well, and also prevent teenage pregnancy in your respective countries, and what we can do together as young people, and how we can engage the different stakeholders as we go forward. So at this time, we're going to be moving on to our panel discussion. I would love Kimberly to assist me here. Is it that we have our moderator live and ready?
Right, so she is logging in, but she is not on at the moment. So good afternoon, everyone. So what I'd like to know is, Christina, could you hold down the fort until? And you're doing a wonderful job so far. So
thank you. Thank you. All right, so give me a second. Let me pull up. So today we have a panel. I like to call it an erudite panel. Listen, ladies and gentlemen, we're talking about young people from across the region who are at the top of their field in terms of SRH, sexual and reproductive health services, rights for young people, information, all of the works. And today they're here to talk to us a little bit about what can we do to support young women, not just young women, but also young men in addressing teenage pregnancy, adolescent pregnancy. So what we'll do in terms of the setup for the panel is that firstly, the panelists will have a few minutes, not very long, to give us some introductory statements. And after they deliver that, we'll go into some Q&A. We'll start off first with I would say prescribed questions that we'd have had before based on what we'd have collected from persons around the region, and then we move into a more live Q&A that you'll be able to text in the chat or open your mic and to ask. So we'll have that section as well. So we have the live Q&A and also have a Q&A where we'll ask them what we'd already prepared beforehand. So who are the persons that we have for today? Give me a second. Alrighty. So today we have Ms. Teres Lord, and she'll be presenting to us on adolescent pregnancy, the effects on education, right? And then we have Mr. Kobe Smith, and yes, he's a young man from Guyana. Teres is from Trinidad, and Kobe is speaking on the effects on health and finance. Then we have Miss Faye King speaking on access to comprehensive sexuality education for adolescents. Oh, I see Kobe have a lot of fans in the chat, man. Kevin is bigging you up, Kobe. All right, and then we have Miss Kimberly Gilbert, who just spoke, right? And may I big up Kimberly as well, because she's actually the main curator for the event today. So she's playing both roles, right? She'll be speaking about access to SRH and health services. Then we have Mr. Kamal Clark. He's speaking on pregnancy prevention, advanced adolescent and youth health in the Caribbean. And then we have Miss Denise Greaves from Jamaica, who is speaking her truth, her personal story as someone who would have lived through the experience of teenage pregnancy. So, as I said before, big bad panel we have that will have a lot of information for you, and I'm very sure that you're going to enjoy it. Please listen, because we expect to hear the questions coming through at the end of their presentations. So, we're going to allow Ms. Teres Lord to go ahead and deliver her initial statements at this time. Teres?
Esteemed panel, specially invited guests, organizing committee, distinguished viewers from across the Caribbean, good afternoon. Permit me to begin by congratulating the Pan American Health Organization, World Health Organization, and UNFPA team on the launch of the Caribbean Youth and Adolescent Health Roadmap. Of the issues highlighted, the call to action articulated, and the commitments and recommendations formulated by youth and for youth, adolescent pregnancy has figurated as one of the most challenging and threatening to the health and well-being of young people. So I am really pleased to weigh in on this, assessing the consequences from an educational vantage point. Now, I would like to also disclaim that due to the very nature of pregnancy, whereby mothers carry the child, my contribution would focus mostly on the impact of the adolescent pregnancy on the adolescent mother and not so much the father, not neglecting that he too can be significantly impacted by this. However, where it pertains to the education, I will focus on the mother for all intents and purposes. Now, it is my opinion that anything that can affect your education can affect your life. It is undisputed that for the gross majority, becoming an adolescent mother can affect whether that mother completes secondary school, attains a school leaving certificate or subjects, attends university, pursues any further academics. And thus, all of these impact the type and quality of job she acquires, if at all, and it impacts the type and quality of life that she is able to enjoy, if at all. In fact, according to a recent UNFPA study entitled Girlhood Not Motherhood, approximately 12 million girls ages 15 to 19 give birth every single year in developing countries. That is 12 million girls ages 15 to 19 give birth every single year in developing countries. Now, these astonishing and worrying figures shock me to my core, because what that means is that the educational pursuits of approximately 12 million girls are either significantly delayed or they are halted indefinitely. This is on account of a range of different consequences. The negative stigma associated with being a young mother, the judgments and labels by teachers and even peers on being promiscuous, loose, or even bad. And then they feel a sense of guilt, fear, denial. And then there's also the inability to return to school for health reasons due to the commonality of complications during pregnancy and childbirth among adolescents. In fact, and now this is a fact, that the leading cause of death of girls ages 15 to 19, complications in pregnancy and childbirth. And finally, the necessity of deferring academic pursuits because of the very real need to acquire a job to provide for that child. Now, contrary to what social media might portray, being a mother, yes, it is a blessing, it is a miracle. It is cute and fun dressing up your child in matching outfits and all of that, but it's also a tremendous responsibility and should thus be delayed until after adolescence, until after the acquisition of education, and until an understanding and appreciation of motherhood is attained. Now, to avoid the exacerbation of this problematic, an all of government and an all of society and an all-inclusive approach is needed. It has to be adopted with urgency. It must be underpinned by good science, and there must be a desire to shift this change, because I'm a firm believer that where there's a will, there is a way. And where there's a need, there must be a will, and we have a need. So we cannot continue along this path. We cannot continue with 12 million girls giving birth every single year. We cannot continue with these complications, the inherent complications that pregnant adolescent mothers face during pregnancy and childbirth. And we cannot continue with young girls not actualizing their potential because their education was disrupted because of a pregnancy that could have been delayed. So what we need to do is that we need to give strong consideration to the inclusion of curriculum-based comprehensive sexuality education as a means to reduce unwanted pregnancies and delay adolescent pregnancy. Now, from a governmental perspective, give attention to these outrageous and restrictive laws and policies pertaining to access to health services and information on the basis of age, on the basis of affordability and accessibility, and on the basis of health worker bias. What we also need is services, be it health or educational or otherwise, that are confidential, respectful, culturally appropriate, age appropriate, and relevant. Now, I would not possibly do justice if I tried to condense this into the allotted 5 minutes. Thus, I welcome your thoughts, your questions, and your contributions on this subject. Thank you for your attention, and God bless you.
Thank you, Therese. 12 million girls in developing nations get pregnant per year. I mean, just that figure alone, I think, reiterates the importance of this session and why is it that we need to have the youth at the table, as well as different stakeholders in championing the cause of adolescent pregnancy prevention and also support for our teen mothers and fathers. So at this time, we will have Mr. Kobe Smith, and you'll be talking about the effects of adolescent pregnancy on health and finance. Go ahead, Kobe.
Thank you, Madam Chairperson Christina. I want to begin by quoting from Marianne Williamson, who once eloquently postulated that our deepest fear is not that we're inadequate. our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. We ask ourselves, who am I to be gorgeous, talented, and fabulous? Actually, who are you not to be? Before I began to put thoughts to my paper, well, in this case, my tablet, I thought that it was only fitting for me to dedicate those words to our adolescent mothers, both on the call, but also in our region and around the world. I reflected on the fact that this space that I'm occupying, under normal circumstances, I'm not supposed to be here, but I have to be here because it is time that men and boys are engaged in the process, and men and boys are really brought to the understanding, the deep understanding, that it is time that we, as men and boys, participate as co-champions for gender equality and co-champions and defenders to ensure that we eliminate but also eradicate adolescent pregnancy. So I thank the organizers for having not just me, but the other males on the panel, because it's really incredible and it's also important. So let's get to the meat of the matter. So according to the most recent report from Save the Children, it noted that the children of uneducated mothers are more than twice as likely to die or to be malnourished than the children of mothers who have secondary or higher education. In the grand scheme of things, many adolescent girls are forced into unplanned pregnancy, but also unsafe sex and marriage, putting them at risk for unsafe abortions, but also sexually transmitted infections such as HIV and others, but also dangerous childbirth. In the context of Guyana in 2013, the United Nations Population Fund, UNFPA, stated that Guyana recorded the second highest rate of adolescent pregnancy, with 97 out of every 1,000 girls between the ages of 15 to 19 given birth. This was a very challenging time, because you could just imagine, with a population size of less than 1 million people, possibly 750,000, for you to have that many cases, it was just astounding. But the primary healthcare data indicate that between 2015 and 2016, and this is important, there were 6,937 adolescent pregnancies. Most of these adolescents were denied an opportunity to continue their education. As a consequence, they lost their already low opportunity of becoming gainfully employed and faced stigmatization, not just from parents, but peers and their community. And so when we think about adolescent pregnancy, and quite often we think about it in this isolated way where we blame young girls for becoming pregnant, I think it is time we blame our system. I think it is time we blame, or we hold accountable, those policies and those structures that, number one, inhibit access, restrict services, but also deny young girls the opportunity to continue their education in order for them to contribute not just to their child, but their family and the wider society. And so in the context of financing, I want to make the point to say that we cannot expect young women and girls to contribute to our society when we don't have systems in place to ensure that if unfortunately they become pregnant while they're in their adolescent stage, they are reintegrated into the formal school system in order to, number one, complete their secondary education at minimum and move on to higher education, but also to be eligible for employment in order to make some money. I'm conscious of time, but I also want to talk about financing in the context of government and what governments can do. And I want to say that the context of Guyana, we're doing well, even though our numbers were high, because we have the structures and systems in place. So we have, like Jamaica, and I was doing some comparisons, Jamaica and Guyana actually have similar components within their reintegration policy for adolescent mothers in terms of support, in terms of financing, in terms of partnerships between public and private actors. And so in terms of financing that the government can provide, there's the national budget. And so in the context of Guyana, there's the HFLE unit where the reintegration program is anchored. And so considerations have been given where there are subventions. Subventions are given to organizations like one I'm associated with, the Ghana Responsible Parenthood Association, but also others like the Women Across Differences that may have to expand their programs regionally to support and help meet the needs of pregnant and parenting schoolgirls and adolescent mothers. And so I think in the grand scheme of things, we need to ensure that we not just have a reintegration policy to ensure that there are systems in place for them to continue education in order to be gainfully employed, but it is time that governments and government agencies put money to their policies in order to ensure that these interventions are sustained in a way that there is longevity in terms of ensuring the support moves on and is furthered. And so, in the interest of time, I will end there, and I hope that we will continue to have these incredible conversations as we move forward. I thank you so much.
Thank you, Kobe. As he said very profoundly, we cannot expect women and girls to give back to our society if we don't ensure that they're reintegrated so that they can complete their education as well as access meaningful employment. Big up, Kobe. Thank you so much. At this time, I would like to introduce our moderator for this afternoon, Miss Ruth Lawrence. She is here with us and she'll be taking over at this time. And then right after Ruth introduces herself, we will have Miss Faking. Ruth?
Thank you so much, Christina. Hello, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here with you this afternoon. As Christina rightly said, my name is Ruth Lawrence, and I am coming from the cool island of Kingston, Jamaica. I would want to say it's the best, but as Caribbean national, we're all the best, right? And so it's a pleasure to be sharing with all of you this afternoon. And so just a little bit about me. I am a youth development practitioner here here in Jamaica. I have been doing this for the past, I would say 15 years. So it has been quite a while. I have been actively involved in ASRH, and it's also equally a pleasure to be sharing with you this afternoon. And so I missed a lot of the introductions because of some technical challenges, and I'm sure the panelists would have gotten an opportunity to introduce themselves and just to give a little bit of background in terms of what they will be contributing today. And so I want to say big up to all the panelists, big up to Kamal, to Faye, to Kimberly, to Kobe, to PAHO, to Sandra, Maria, Therese, Denise, I hope I pronounced that correctly, Rodena, Sienna, Sonja, and Clarissa. Welcome, 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 and big up yourself, as we would say here in Jamaica. And so I just want to kickstart the questions real quick. I want to start, of course, with the lovely Kimberly. I want to pose a question to you, Kimberly, based on what you would have spoken about earlier. What are some of the barriers, though, that you think are challenges within the Caribbean as it relates to adolescents and youth as they, basically facing access with regards to SRH? What do you think are some of the barriers to service provisions? Because we know that the age tends to be a factor. And of course, we want to explore a little bit what are some of the barriers that might be stopping adolescents.
Hi, Ruth. I would love to answer the question, but I just want to make you aware of something. Not all the panelists have presented as yet. We've only had Therese and Kobe. So I don't I don't want to jump the gun.
Okay.
Continue after Kobe and go with Faye, and then we'll do Predator.
Awesome. Thank you for that. You see, that's what happens, when you have technical challenges. You want to run, and I don't want to run ahead of things today. So thank you for that. So jump on over to Faye then. Faye is from the Adolescent. Well, she's going to be speaking today about the adolescent access to comprehensive and sexual education. So Faye is looking so young. Very, very young, and I love it. So Faye, tell us a little bit about adolescent access to comprehensive sexuality education.
Hi everyone. I'm so grateful to be here. I'm not that young. I'm only 22. I'm from Suriname, and I'm a gender and SRH advocate. And yes, today I would love to talk about adolescent access to comprehensive sexuality education. And when we're talking about adolescent pregnancy prevention, we think about prevention methods. And of course, comprehensive sexuality education is one that immediately comes to mind and one that we need to prioritize. We have been discussing for years about the implementation of comprehensive sexuality education within the region. And I want to take you guys a little bit back in time. About 10 years ago, our ministers of health of the Latin American and Caribbean region came together during the AIDS conference, and they came up with a declaration of preventing through education. And there they discussed the importance of comprehensive sexuality education. They actually stated that they were going to reevaluate their educational programs. They were going to implement comprehensive sexuality education methods that are youth friendly, that are human rights based, that are you know, gender-based focused. And what we're seeing, we're now 10 years further, and we're still having that discussion on implementation. So I just want to talk about how we should hold our leaders accountable when it comes to policy making and implementing and prioritizing comprehensive sexuality education within our school systems, because in those 10 years, we are still the second highest rate when it comes to adolescent pregnancy fertility rate. We're still the second highest of the world, and 1 in 5 live births in the Caribbean region are of to the UNFPA brief of 2017. So there have been education, and as we're entering the decade of action, and as we have committed last year during the ICPD 25 that we're really going to take action and prioritize women and girls, their reproductive health and rights. So it's time to stop to have these conversations and really, as youth, hold our leaders accountable when it comes to this discussion, of course. You're also seeing that there is a lack of information when it comes to not only pregnancy prevention and contraceptives, but also when it comes to STIs and STDs. You know, the majority of youth are still not understanding that topic. And it's because we have programs in place that are not adhering to because a few years ago we were implementing it through TV, and how many of our youth are still watching TV? So the methods need to become sustainable. The comprehensive sexuality education programs need to become sustainable within our schools. What we're also seeing is that when it comes to comprehensive sexuality education within schools, it's really left to the teachers and principals and high schools to look how they will implement it. But we're seeing that they don't have resources, they lack information, they lack knowledge on how to give it in a comprehensive way. So it's still being done through biology classes, it's still being done in a very medical anatomy way, when we need to discuss the emotional part. We need to discuss preventive ways of when it comes to adolescent pregnancy and when it comes to comprehensive sexuality education. Just looking at my own country in Suriname, we have recently done a study to see how many youth are still using contraceptives. And in 2010, when the ministers came together, as I took you guys back in time, about 42.1% of youth in one of the studies between the ages of 15 and 19 were using contraceptives. Now we're in 2018, there was another study conducted, and about 24% of youth of the ages of 15 and 19 were using contraceptives. So there's also a decrease with when it comes to contraceptive usage, when it comes to understanding contraceptives and STIs and STDs, as I already mentioned. So it's really important to step up and hold these leaders accountable, that if they do sign declarations and recommendations and documents that say that sexual rights are human rights, that we hold them accountable to really put that in action and to really make policy and introduce a sustainable way of education and comprehensive sexuality education. So yeah, that's kind of where I want to lead the conversation. I want to stop having this discussion and really holding accountable and taking action when we're entering this new era.
Wow, thank you so much, Faye. I always appreciate when I hear from the youth, and not only that, but you articulately just displayed basically what your concerns are for leaders really to be held accountable, but most importantly for youth to be at the center of the decision making as it relates to sexual and reproductive health. So I must commend you for that. I know we're going to be diving in a little bit later in the discussion, and we're going to be routing back to you to hear well, some of the other recommendations that you have that the Caribbean can adopt to advancing this mission, basically. And so we're gonna jump on from Miss Faye to Kimberly Gilbert, who's gonna tell us a little bit about adolescent access to SRH health services. So Kimberly, it's a pleasure to again meet you, and just to hand over to you to just give us your 2 minutes.
Thank you, Ruth. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Kimberly Gilbert, and I would really like to begin by thanking PAHO and UNFPA, for their continued dedication and investment in the lives, especially the health of adolescents and youth in the Caribbean, and additionally for initializing, this week, planning the activities around Adolescent Pregnancy Prevention Week. I begin my presentation by highlighting the fact that access to health services is a fundamental human right. I think that's the lens that we should look at this with. Both the Universal Declaration on Human Rights and the Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Violence Against Women, CEDAW, mention that all people have the right to health care and necessary social services. Now, of course, sexual and reproductive health care services falls under that broad umbrella. And additionally, the ICPD program of action declares that information and services should be made available to adolescents to help them understand their sexuality and protect them from unwanted pregnancies, sexually transmitted diseases, and subsequent risk of infertility. And it's important to note that this should be combined with the education of young men, as Kobe was alluding to earlier, to respect women's self-determination and to share in the responsibility with women in matters of sexuality and reproduction. So where this begins to get complicated is when we look at the minimum age of consent to sexual activity versus the age of accessing SRH services without parental consent in countries. In numerous Caribbean countries, there are legal gaps by which adolescents can consent to sexual activity, for example, at the age of 16, sometimes even as early as 15, but cannot access sexual and reproductive health services without parental consent until they are the age of 18. Now, you can see a huge gap there, at least 2 to 3 years for these young persons. And it's not to say that, okay, they cannot access it, but they would need to have their parent, a guardian, or responsible adult with them. This is case, it's true for example, Anguilla, St. Kitts and Nevis, the Bahamas, just to name a few of the countries where you would find this situation. Now, while there exist child protection laws in some countries, unfortunately, these barriers that are set up may keep people from obtaining the health services that they need and that they deserve as well. So sometimes these barriers are direct discrimination and informal stigma. And sometimes these barriers come through formal policies. So we have the absence of adequate regulations or laws and policies that impact SRHR and rights, laws and regulations that are, these are powerful instruments, and it's expanding and sometimes restrictive of the reproductive health and rights, as I would have given an example of earlier, right? These constraints may also be consequently deliberately designed laws. So for example, the increase of the age of consent of sexual intercourse in Trinidad and Tobago that we experience here from 16 to 18 years. And it's also important to note that, sexual and reproductive health and rights may directly violate regulations. Sexual and reproductive health rights may be directly violated by regulations or lack thereof in some instances. So it's always, once policy and laws and so on are being made, it is important to check, the human rights to ensure that all persons are included and their rights are not being taken away from them. I'd like to move on to teenage pregnancy a bit, and there's an estimated amount of 20% of women in the Caribbean that have at least one child by the age of 19. Now, it's also important to note that there's a considerable percentage of adolescent girls giving birth, meaning there's a larger percentage of girls giving birth before the age of 15 years. I must note that contraceptive the use also enables people to have greater control over their bodies, their relationships, and their broader social and economic lives. Now, if persons do not have access to services and to be able to use these contraceptives, then, that is one of the reasons why we would have these young girls given birth before the ages of 15 years, teenage years, and whatnot. And I also would go a bit deeper into that. We need to foster an environment where we start discussing and using contraceptives, in a way that it is trustworthy. We have a lot of conversations that are in a vacuum, and we do not have a lot of public conversations about these issues, about these topics. And, it's times like these when we're looking at these type, like adolescent pregnancy prevention and so forth, that we really get an opportunity to bring these things to light. And what I would like to ask is that we do this more often so that we can really touch base with the young persons who are not being afforded their rights, so that we can do what is best for them. And the roadmap that was launched on Monday really presents that opportunity. And I will be sharing later on what I pulled from the roadmap, I think, are really good action items for us to use moving forward to ensure the health of young women in the Caribbean is really being administered to. I'll also like to highlight as well, because this is an issue with teenage pregnancy, that one of the things that we really throw a blanket over is termination of pregnancies. So, in most countries, the legality of abortion, it generally falls into different categories, such as sometimes it's prohibited altogether. There are some countries where no matter what, you cannot have an abortion. There are others that are to save a woman's life in different scenarios, will be able to have an abortion to preserve her physical health. If there's an ectopic pregnancy or something like that, you would have to abort the baby. In the case of rape or incest, there are some countries that allow it as well. And to preserve the young woman's mental health, so there are countries such as Anguilla, BVI, Montserrat, St. Lucia, Guyana, Barbados, Belize. These countries do that. And also for economic reasons and upon request, only 2 countries permit the termination of pregnancy, which are Guyana and Barbados. I'd also like to highlight the fact that in some countries, young women can still get married at the age of 14, 15, 16, and so forth. Having laws and legislation that is restrictive really prevents younger persons who really want to reach out for help to get the help that they need. In Trinidad and Tobago, I believe, is the only country that has the age at 18 for restricting child marriage. I'd like to highlight 3 of the action items from the roadmap that I really think is necessary for us to move forward with, which is removing medical and financial barriers to contraceptive use through the application of evidence-based eligibility guidelines, also providing information and contraceptive services that are evidence-based. We need more studies here in the Caribbean to be able to really have the kind of effect that we want to do in order to be able to reduce the numbers. And also to create enabling environments to enhance adolescent access and to use the use of sexual and reproductive health services. We need to have a lot more clinics that are receptive to young persons, that do education, that do outreaches, so that young people, we're breaking down the barriers and breaking down the walls and breaking down the taboo that is necessary for us to really make the type of impact on the lives of young people in the Caribbean. Thank you so very much, Ruth.
Thank you so much for that just now, Kimberly. I've been making notes. So today I'm actually a student. I'm being taught by the masters at hand today. And one of the things that was rather shocking based on the information you just gave, Kimberly, was that the majority of the adolescent mothers actually gave birth under 15 years. And that for me is rather alarming. And definitely one of the recommendations I have noted down is that you made mention that there needs to be more conversations like this to build awareness. And equally so, you did say that there needs to be more evidence-based information that should be used to strengthen the conversation. So that for me is very instructive, and is also instructive as a region that we do need to take this thing very, very seriously. So thank you so much for that, Kimberly. And of course, I am looking forward to chatting with you a little later. So we're gonna jump on from Kimberly to Kamal Clark, a gentleman that looks very familiar to me. Kamal, tell us, you are gonna be talking a little bit about adolescent pregnancy prevention and advancing adolescents and youth health within the Caribbean. Kamal, tell us, you're one of the very few males in this discussion. Toby, so we want to hear a little bit from you.
Okay, hi, good evening, everyone. Thanks for having me. I'm Kamal Clark from Barbados. I work at the Barbados Family Planning Association, and my colleagues spoke very thoroughly on their topics and covered a lot of the points that come when it comes to talking about prevention. So what I will do is speak from the perspective of someone who interacts with youth daily and interact with young mothers daily, okay? So when it comes to pregnancy prevention, adolescent pregnancy prevention, 2 things to me stand out the most, and that is education and accessibility to healthcare. Now, we spoke at length throughout this panel about education, how important it is, and combating misinformation. So misinformation, we have, like, I speak to young people often, and they tell me that, if you want to not get pregnant, just drink a hot Guinness after having sex, or perhaps, having sex while standing up so the sperm can't get up to the egg. So those are the kind of things that the young people are sharing with each other. So it's important to combat that misinformation with CSC, as Faye mentioned earlier. And this is being holistic. So we talk at length about the risks of unprotected sex. And they know this, they know the risks. They know about STIs, they know that pregnancy is a risk. But what they don't really think about is how these risks can impact them in the future. So they don't really think about, okay, so I have a risk of getting pregnant, but how does getting pregnant affect me getting my diploma? How does it affect me getting a job in the future? How does it affect my finances? So educating them on these kind of things can actually then prevent them from doing the risky behaviors. Another way when it comes to pregnancy prevention, we have the mother's testimonies. So we showed some videos. We have the young mothers telling about their experiences when they're young, what they had to go through, especially the ones who don't have the support that they need from either their partner or from their family. And that is how a lot of them have to get through. So you have 16, 17-year-olds who end up getting put out of their house by their parents because they're from conservative households or their parents are just not about dealing with it. And then they have to struggle. And they're given, those mothers giving their testimonies can be very impactful. And at Barbados Planning, we have a program called the Adolescent and Young Mothers Program. So we put out a call to young mothers who are interested to join the program. We give them life skills, we give them group counseling, and hearing their stories and seeing how they flourish after getting these life skills, like things like CV writing, things like public speaking, things like budgeting and finance, just these basic things that they can then take and have a flourishing life even with their circumstances. So that's a great program, and I'm going to get back to that. Maybe talk a little bit more about advancing adolescent health. And the other thing that I was going to talk about, as I mentioned, was accessibility to healthcare. So Kimberly mentioned the age of consent. So in most Caribbean countries, the age of consent is around 15 to 16, whereas the age of access is 18. And that is a huge discrepancy, as was mentioned. You have then a situation where you have 16, 17-year-olds having sex, but they don't want to go to the doctor because they have to take a parent with them. And they don't want the parent to know that they're having sex, which is an issue. So, and Therese, I believe, mentioned stigma and judgment earlier. And this holds true when it comes to contraception. So you have teenagers going to like pharmacies to get like condoms, and they're being judged. They're being looked at like, what you need a condom for? And that can deter them from wanting to get contraception and then end up having unprotected sex. So these are things that you look at when you look at prevention. So you look at how do we tackle these issues. And the minister from Guyana during the launch, he mentioned that Guyana has these initiatives for the adolescent health, and you have safe spaces for youth. And I believe that is tremendous, and that should be something that's done across the board. You have safe spaces for young people where they can go, they can get affordable healthcare, they can get judgment-free zones where they feel comfortable going, and that would be huge. They can actually feel good about getting the access that they need, and that can be a great step in pregnancy prevention. And another thing is creating policies specifically for adolescents and youth health, for their own protection, and lowering the age of access to match the age of consent. And I say lowering because you don't want to raise the age of consent, because then you just have a situation where you have more people having sex underage, and we don't want that either. So yeah, so that's what I am bringing to the table here, and I look forward to the question and answer later to delve deeper into these points. Thank you.
Wow, thank you so much. You see, I told you guys, we're learning from the experts here today. And Kamal, as the student here, I took some notes, and I love the fact that you said that one of the biggest challenges that adolescents are facing right now is the whole access to education and access, right, to services. You equally alluded to the fact that there is a perpetuation of ignorance as it relates to, person's sexual and reproductive health. And clearly there has to be more awareness being built around that within the Caribbean. One of the things for me that you said, which was very instructive, was the fact how life skills, persons who were exposed, to life skills training, how it is that their lives basically took a turn for the better because their knowledge would have increased. So it would have naturally caused their level of thinking and just being would have also changed where that is concerned. What was alarming to me, I wanted to ring a bell when you said it, was the disparity that existed between the age of consent and the age of access. So for most countries, I think the age of consent is 16 thereabout, and the age of accent, yeah, so it varies. But the age of access to services, you would have to be like 18. So definitely that is something we have to look at. This is serious business, and that's why we're having a conversation like this. So thank you so much for that, Kamal. At this time, we're gonna be jumping to Denise. Denise, if I spoil a name, please correct me. So Denise Greaves, is that the case in terms of how your name is pronounced? Please unmute and just let me know.
Yes, it is. It's Denise Greaves.
Yes, Jesus, hallelujah. All right, so Denise is going to be sharing her story. Okay, guys, if you don't know me, I'm the kind of person, I tend to be a little bit dramatic. So I'm trying to take myself here today. So Denise is going to be sharing her story, guys. And I want for you guys to take notes and just to listen carefully as she shares. So Denise, thank you so much for agreeing, for being with us this afternoon. And I'm looking forward to sharing with you as you share your story. So Denise, the floor is yours, all yours.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you so much for having me. My name is Denise Greaves. I am 24 years old, and I am currently an author and an entrepreneur. I was a teenage mom. I got pregnant when I was 16 years old. I gave birth 17 years old. And I must make reference to two things that two previous panelists said before. One being Rodena. She said, the stigma that's attached to being a teenage mom. And I can speak first and with that, not just in your home, but in schools, even from teachers, guidance counselors. It's something that is all around. So as a teenage mom, before the act of even getting pregnant, just the fact that you're sexually active, there comes, as she said, the discriminatory terms, loose and such that I won't bother to get into. So there's that. I dealt with that somewhat. When I got pregnant, I was doing really well in school. There were high expectations of me from my family, my friends, my teachers, and so forth. When I got pregnant, it was really, I felt, based on the energy that I received, I felt as if my life was ending. It was, oh my God, we had so much hopes for you. What are you going to do now? It was along those lines. And if I should comment on it and give advice to parents or just anyone in the sphere with a teenage mom, do not approach it like that. I know it can be disappointing. At the end of the day, we all want our kids to go to school, go to college, get a good job, stuff like that. But as she had said as well, we do make mistakes and things happen. So you cannot send children to school to be educated and then you deal with them as if they're not. Speak to children honestly and openly. Tell them what sex is, and that's one of the conversations that I think needs to be had. It's very hush-hush about sex. Do not have sex. We're naturally curious creatures as human beings, so I am going to want to have sex. You are telling me not to do this thing with no bucketive. There's no consequences to it. Why shouldn't I do it? Be honest and open and let us know, okay, you're a teenager. If you have sex, this is what's going to happen. It might feel good, but these are the consequences. And at times try to dive away from using the word even consequences too, because later in life, at this age, at 24, I am here knowing that a child is a blessing. When I was 16, that was not the case. So have an honest and an open conversation. That's what I got from being a teenage mom. I would say to teenagers or just young women involved in sexual activities, I am not going to be the person to shut the conversation down and to even say, do not have sex. I want you to really think of the consequences. I dropped out of school. My father was like, when I come back home, I don't want you in my house. There was nowhere for me to go. I was 16 years old. So you have to think about that. Will you be homeless? Where will you get food? How will you provide for your child? The person that you're sexually involved with, how will they manage as well? Because it's a two-way street. I like to think it's a two-way street, and that's a discussion for later. I see that I have that question to respond to regarding males and boys getting involved. So for me and my experience, it's really about being honest and being open and not shunning teenage mothers. It has happened. We consider it to be a mistake, but it's something that has happened, and it's now up to us as I do not remember what his name is mentioned as well. It's not just the school and the parents and stuff like that. It's even up to the government. It's up to all of us as a society, as a family, to provide shelter. And I don't mean physical shelter only, but to provide a home and comfort for our teenage mothers so they can go on and bloom and blossom as I have.
Wow, thank you so much, Denise. One of the things that I love about you is just your level of transparency, but equally so your strength. Girl, at 20 little bit, author, hello. Hello.
Thank you.
I mean, that is something that must be applauded because, persons, as you rightly say, they see teen pregnancy as a death sentence. But girl, you just encourage someone within the Caribbean that life doesn't end with pregnancy. That's where it starts. That's an opportunity to do bigger and better. And you are just, I would just say, you're just you're right now. Getting me all excited because I know there must be somebody right now that's encouraged by you, and I just want to thank you for that. One of the things that you said today, Denise, just now rather, is that you said tell them about sex, have the conversation. I love that. And equally so, you spoke about that. Listen, it is never good to think that it's a death sentence because many person saw it that way, and I love the fact that you stated that just now. You just bless somebody right now. I don't know where they are in, but that just blessed somebody, and so I want to thank you for that. So guys, all our panelists have spoken, and we're gonna be asking some questions now. So if you do have questions for the panelists, I want for you to share that with us, be it via YouTube or via Zoom here. But before I go to the panelists, I want to give a big up from Samantha Henry. Samantha is saying, thank you, PAHO and partners, for all you do in the areas of reducing adolescent pregnancy in the Caribbean. And that's with asterisk. So you know that they are very, very happy for that. So big up yourself, PAHO, and the work that you are doing. All right. And so we're going to get into the questions real quick. And so the first question I have is for Kimberly. Kimberly, tell us, what are some of the barriers or challenges within the Caribbean as it relates to adolescents wanting to acquire access to services?
So some of this would have been addressed before, but I also go over some as well, which are the legislation. So as I would have mentioned, Kamal would have mentioned the discrepancy between the minimum age of accessing services without parental consent, conflicting with the minimum age of consent to sexual activity. What I think also is a challenge is that while majority of countries say that they have comprehensive sexuality in schools, it is not mandatory, as well as there isn't a standardization in terms of the quality of CSE that is taught. And you had cases, as particularly here in Trinidad and Tobago, where teachers who were delivering like the HFLE program were not comfortable sharing on the sexuality component of it. So they were teaching about other skills, other life skills, and not necessarily about sexuality. I think our social norms, Denise would have, alluded to some of when she was speaking just now. Sometimes, we think, oh, I have to hide my business. You don't want to seek help sometimes. Public conversations, we need to continue these conversations on sexuality, about sexual education. Like Denise said, just be open, be honest, talk about it, with young persons so that they understand fully and would be able to make an informed decision. Right here in Trinidad and Tobago, we had a Twitter fiasco, I would call it, where a lot of women came out and spoke up about sexual harassment. Women are being sexually harassed, women are being sexually assaulted. And sometimes it's by the same men doing it to different women. This is something that really came out on Twitter, and I was really glad that women came out and spoke up about what was happening to them. We also have a barrier of young persons not knowing how to negotiate condom use. They're not able to tell their partner, effectively or convince them to be able to use particularly condoms. And also we have to look at the situation sometimes that young people are in. There's sexual abuse, sexual violence, sometimes statutory rape, incest. We have a lot of abuse of minors. And especially during this COVID season, you have a lot of young people being at home, some people being out at work, or they may have a single parent that has to go to work. School is out, so the mother may have to leave the child somewhere where she would not usually do that. And daycare services, at least hair, clothes as well. You have young people that are being groomed from an early age. Somebody is latching onto that child and grooming that child sexually. There's rape within marriage as well, even as young persons, looking at domestic violence. And of course, we have to touch on the emotional violence, as some of the challenges that young people face. Also, stigma surrounding accessing SRH services. Some people don't even want to be seen going into a clinic, going into a hospital, right? Adolescents and youth may experience, direct discrimination and even informal stigma, when they are going to a health clinic or a hospital based on the biases of service providers. Sometimes the reality of it is that they're just not welcoming. To understand a young person's story rather, being a bit prejudiced. Also, gender plays a part in it. Our social construct only sees things a particular way and is not always accepting to persons who are not what we grew up to believe is right and how they should be, So I think that does play a major role when it comes to hindering adolescents accessing SRHR services. I'll end right there because I know we're pressed for time.
Yeah, thank you so much for that, Kimberly. So quickly, we're gonna go to Kobe. Kobe, what do you think are some of the systems that can be put in place to support adolescent fathers?
Thank you for the question. I think it's really necessary that we have it. I think we have a deficit generally in fatherhood. I think we have a lot of absentee fathers, and I think that's really part, and the research shows that it's really part of the societal sickness in a lot of our countries where fathers are not present. And so I think that, first of all, we need to have adolescent fathers know that they can be supported, but also that there are opportunities for them to participate as I said earlier, co-champions for gender equality. But talking about support, I think it's important that how services are packaged, it's important. And so generally, men don't necessarily present themselves for psychosocial support or counseling. And I think it's really because of how it's packaged. And they think, oh, that's a woman thing. I ain't going there and cry. And I ain't going there and, I hope you understand my language, but that's Creole it just gives you. Really and truly, they're turned away because of how it's packaged and promoted. And I think that we need to re-socialize men and boys in the homes to understand that it's okay to let people know how they're feeling, and to let them know that parenthood is a journey, and adolescent parenthood is not a sickness. It's a phase. It's a situation that can be dealt with if there are support systems in place. And so I think thinking about it in a very holistic way, I think they are supposed to be services available. For example, counseling services. I also think that we must understand within the homes that we need to change how we socialize and raise men and boys to understand that it's okay to father. But the challenge, though, is that we expect adolescent fathers to father in some cases when they themselves don't even have fathers. So how exactly? And then the challenge is that you're asking an adolescent, you're asking a child in a way because they're in adolescent stage to be a father, and the age thing kind of exacerbates the situation because you don't have experience in that, and the whole point of absentee fathers, that plays a role because you could imagine you growing up for 15 years and you don't even have a father figure in your life. You just have a single mother who is stressed by the burden of just being a woman alone. Um, that's just plain and simple. I apologize if I'm offending any male on the panel, and I'm not sacrificing my male card, but it's just plain and simple. So a mother's burdened by just being a woman because of how patriarchal this system is, and then she has to deal with children. She has to deal with how botheration some of them are. I'm using Guyanese Creole. It means bad children don't have behavior. She has to deal with child care in terms of ensuring that you're looked after in terms of if you have a babysitter, you have daycare, and so on. She has to deal with school supplies. She has to deal with her own job, her own health issues, mental health, cervical cancer that's killing women in the Caribbean region, breast cancer, and all of that. And I talk from a very personal place because my mother was a single mother before she passed, and she had health issues. Um, Fascinatingly, today is her birthday. And I think about women like her who, I mean, she didn't have bad children. I don't think I was bad, but um, I really feel as though it's burdensome just being number one a woman, and then you have one or two children to deal with. And so the long and short of it, Ruth, is that we need to ensure that fundamentally in homes we re-socialize and change how we train up children or train up men and boys. And then that's the only way we can expect them to really be better in order for them to support their own children. So I would say that, but also psychosocial services are really important for them to understand that they have a responsibility.
All right, let me apologize for that just now. My internet went because it's raining here in Jamaica. Okay, so guys, I missed your final point, Kobe, but I know it was good because you spoke about the point of reference that many of our young men lack. And so because we're a little bit pressed for time though, guys, for each panelist, I'm just gonna give you 10 seconds, really 10 seconds just to tell us, and no, we're pressed for time, guys. 10 seconds in terms of what would be some of the major, just one major takeaway that you would want everyone to leave this discussion with. So I'm gonna start quickly with Faye, and then I will jump over to Kamal. Faye, 10 seconds.
Yeah, so of course I want people to understand the importance of really implementing comprehensive sexuality education and holding our lawmakers accountable to really implement it in our school systems and put it into place, because that's something that we're missing. We're still having the conversation, but during the decade of action, we really need to take action. So that's really what I want people to take away from my statement and conversation.
Wow, thank you so much, Faye. I'm gonna jump over to Kamal. Over to you. 10 seconds, Kamal.
Okay. One takeaway that I want is for persons to engage their governments and policymakers into having safe spaces for youth so that they can get their affordable and accessible healthcare. Yeah, that's the biggest takeaway I have here.
Love it. Thank you, Kamal. I'm going to jump to Therese. Therese, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Thank you for your question.
Quick takeaway for, yes.
Okay, well, at adolescence, a girl is not ready for pregnancy and motherhood. She's not ready physically, developmentally, socially, none of the above. So we need to come together to address this holistically. Like I mentioned, it's not just one person, not just at that individual, but an all of government, an all-inclusive approach to a society and community and the family is implemented, an all-inclusive approach to really address this issue.
Wow. Thank you, Therese. Denise, over to you. 10 seconds. What's your major takeaway that you want us to leave with today?
For me, it would be just easy access to healthcare for young women and young men in getting the information, playing the role, because it takes two to tango. So for me, it's mostly male information, males accessing the information.
Wow. Thank you so much, Denise. Kimberly, your 10 seconds, and then I will hand over to Christina rather, who will take you from there. And we're almost done, guys, so do not leave, okay? Yes, Kimberly, your 10 seconds.
So a lot of my colleagues would have had the top-down approach. I like to take the bottom-up approach. I would like to emphasize the importance of being real with young people, being straightforward with them, have them understand what their rights are as well, and help them to advocate for their own sexual and reproductive health. So I think that's important, that's critical.
Awesome. Thank you so much, guys. I must again apologize for the technical glitches that I had, but it was a pleasure sharing with you this afternoon. I want to hand over back now to my able chairperson, Christina Williams, who will take it from here. Christina? All right, so Christina might have stepped away for a little, but
No, I'm here.
Okay, all right.
Thank you so much, Auntie Ruth. And that's actually how I call Miss Ruth Lawrence back here in Jamaica. She's actually my supervisor while I worked with the National Secondary Students Council for 4 years. So we're in the same room together and I'm feeling very pleased. My video is off, so I apologize for that. I had to switch devices, but I know you'd have seen my face earlier. You're familiar with my face. So I just want to thank all the panelists today. Very great job. I sat here and I wrote down a number of the takeaways and I was just blown away. We spoke about the importance of ensuring that legislation matches with the realities that we have on the ground. You cannot say to a young person, you're 16 years of age, you can go ahead and have sex, but then you cannot access the services that you need to protect yourself while you're having sex. We heard about the resocialization of men and repackaging services so that they can access psychosocial support. We hear Denise and others talking about the importance of having candid conversations with our young people and to ensure, while it's age appropriate and relevant, that we tell them the truth. As we talked about earlier, youth, our truth. You can't expect us to have our truth if we don't know the truth, right? So we have to tell young people what they need to protect themselves. Very good. And then we also talked a little bit about ensuring that the government provides support. And as Kimberly said, also a bottom-up approach as well, where we involve young people, bring them to the table so that we know what their needs are and that we address them. But none of this conversation could be possible without the help, I would say, or even the idea from PAHO and UNFPA. This is our first adolescent pregnancy prevention week. It's the first ever. So we have made history here. Everybody can clap yourselves. You can't see me clapping, but please clap yourselves. You are part of history. And this won't be the first, but rather the first to many more sessions like these as we champion the cause of adolescent pregnancy prevention, as well as the support of our teen mothers as we go forward. Thank you so much for being here with us. I'm Christina Williams. I was your chairperson. Once again, big up the planning committee. I think most of the panelists here were part of the planning committee. Kimberly led the committee as well. And once again, young people from all across the region, thank you so much. And we look forward to tomorrow on Friday, where we have our technical meeting. Kimberly, what time is that tomorrow again?
It is at 11 a.m. AST.
So 11 a.m. AST. All right, great. So
the PAHO social media handles for the link.
Okay, no problem. So while we're leaving here, we're going to have a video. I think it's a coffee video that Clarissa will play for us as we leave. But while she's getting that video ready, please go on social media now. Social media now. Twitter, Instagram, wherever, and to tweet out something that you learned today or what was reinforced today, because we don't want this to just be a moment. We want it to be a movement. Thank you all. I'm Christina Williams from Jamaica, logging out.